What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. Today is a really good day, especially if you're a Diode Dynamics fan, because SKT Customs is finally releasing their lower grill LED pod kit for the Diode Dynamics SS3. And I'm gonna give you guys a first look at that kit with 5 SS3s installed with that kit and show you guys the installation from beginning to end, wiring, everything you need to know about installing this kit, and then we're gonna go take it for a ride and see how good the output is. So guys, before we get into it, make sure you guys hit that like button, subscribe, all that good stuff. It really helps the channel out a lot. So without further ado, let's get into it. So I've been waiting for this for quite some time now, and I'm super stoked to be able to install it and showcase it for you guys. In case you don't know, the SKT Customs lower grill LED pod kit was originally designed for the Baja Designs squadrons. They have since developed some brackets to use some cheaper pods, some aux beam pods, the strands pods, which I have reviewed on the channel, and a couple others. But I have been waiting for the Diode Dynamics pod kit for a few reasons. One being the price point of the Diode Dynamics. You really can't beat it. In case you don't know, they've got 3 output levels: Sport, Pro, and Max. Max being the brightest, most expensive. Sports being the least brightest, least expensive. And they also offer backlit options too, which the squadrons don't offer. So with the price point, the output that they have, the backlit option is what I'm after. And another nice thing about Diode Dynamics is they have a pod for every budget. So the sports are the most affordable, especially if you don't add the backlit option. If you add the backlit option, it's a little bit more money. So just a few reasons why I've been waiting for the Diode Dynamics kit to come out. Plus, they'll match my amber backlit fogs, which are Diode Dynamics SS3s as well. So like I said, they have a pod for every budget. Whereas the Baja Designs, they're a little bit more expensive. They don't have a backlit option, and the SS3 Pro, in my opinion, is just as bright or slightly brighter than the Squadron Pros, and they're a little cheaper. And like I said, they have a backlit option as well if you want to opt for that. So with all of that out of the way, let's get to the install, and then we will check the output out. So just for some context here, I'm going to be installing 3 Max and 2 Pros. 2 of the Maxes are going to be combo beam amber. 1 other Max is going to be driving beam and white, and the 2 Pros are going to be driving beam as well. All of them are going to have the amber backlit. So let's get to the install. All right guys, now let's have a look at what we get inside the box. So really nice presentation here. Here is the pre-cut grill for our 5 pods. Now I believe you can only buy this kit for trucks with parking sensors. So my truck has it. Most of them do, but some don't. So if you don't have parking sensors, it comes with these dummy caps, so that way it kind of looks a little bit better than having a hole. So anyway, really nice packaging. Of course, stickers are always a plus. Can never have too many stickers. And looks like we got some hardware here. I'm just guessing. Aha, the brackets for the pods. And so here, oh, this must be the hardware. Oh yeah. So you got a really nice bag, drawstring bag. And here we have the grill. And there is the bracket down there for the pods. So that is what we get in the box. So let's go ahead and rip this open and get this thing installed. All right, so what we're going to want to do first is unbolt this bracket from here. I believe it's just bolted on there for shipping purposes. The bolt is a 10 millimeter and the nut is an 11. There we go. All right, guys, so once we empty the hardware bag, there are more nuts, bolts, and washers. There's some bigger nuts and bolts and washers and some smaller. Remember, these are 10 millimeter bolts and 11 millimeter nuts. We already took 3 of these out when we removed this bracket from the grill. So now we are left with 6. We're going to use 4 of them to hold these brackets to the truck. So once we get the grill ready to, goes like this. Once we get the grill ready to pop in, we're going to go ahead and remove the old grill and put this one in. Hey guys, so for the upper grill removal, it is, trying to hold the camera here, all it is a series of 8 millimeter nuts on some studs all along the top, and then on the bottom, we'll get to that in a second, is just some push clips. So all you're going to do is take an 8mm wrench. You're just going to loosen them. Now you don't need to take the nut all the way off because it's attached to this stud, which just slides right out. So I'll show you. Just like that. So you're just going to keep them together. Just loosen them enough to be able to slide them out. And then once you have all of them removed along the top, I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I believe there's 9 of those nuts and studs along the top. We're going to go down to the bottom. Alright, so hopefully I can make it out in the camera. But along the bottom here, we've got a series of push clips. So you're just going to take a tool, something like this, something with a V in the middle that you can pry up the center of the clip with. Just like that. And continue on, remove them all. I already removed a few of them, but remove all the clips, and then the grill will come out from the front. We'll get to the sensors here in a minute. Alright guys, so once you've got the grill removed, like I said, it's going to come out the front here. So this is just one of the sensors. So there's a tab right here, and there's a tab right here. Just going to kind of use your fingers and pull them out just enough, and then use your middle finger on the front side, pull the 2 tabs and push from the front, and the sensor will slide right out. And just leave them hanging there. We'll push them back in once we get the new grill ready. But next thing we're gonna have to do is swap out these sensor brackets. All right, so now for the brackets themselves, there is a right and a left. They are labeled, so if you do get them mixed up, I don't know if you may have, but there's an R there. Just do one at a time, that way you don't get them mixed up. So there is a tab right here. Actually, there's one tab, but there's like 2 little tangs that you got to push in. So we're just gonna do 1 and then 1, and then now we're gonna move to the top of it. Same thing, push down, and the bezel for the bracket comes right out. And there is an orientation, so make sure you just have them both side by side just to take the guesswork out of it. And go ahead and slip it into the SKT grill, just like that. Make sure that the tabs are grabbing, which by the sounds of it, they are. Yep. And then we're gonna do the same to the other bracket on the other side, and then this grill will be ready to reinstall. Alrighty, so now we'll take the SKT grill, and we're gonna slide our sensors right back in. Make sure you hear the clicks. Do the same on the other side. Two clicks. Now we will slide it into place, and then we will go down below, put all the hardware back in it, and then it's going to be time to install the pod brackets and then the pods. Alright, now we will reinstall the hardware. Clips go on the bottom, and then those studs with the 8mm nuts go on the top. Just like factory. It may be a little bit difficult to get these studs back on. You're not doing anything wrong, that's just the nature of the beast. Sometimes you really got to put some decent pressure on them to get them to slide in. But once you've got all of your hardware put in, then we will move on to the pod brackets. Also, just a quick tip for you guys: push in on the outside of this grill while you're tightening these nuts down, and that will keep it flush against the bumper. Especially on the corners, because the corners do like to kind of stick out a little bit, but as long as you put pressure from the front and tighten these nuts down, everything will fit nice and flush. Alrighty, so the grill's in, everything is fitting really nice and flush. Alrighty guys, so these brackets right here, we're going to want the SKT logo facing down with the U facing towards the grill. So it's going to go in just like this. And there are already pre-drilled holes
on your factory brackets. So we're going to take those smaller bolts and nuts, slide them through the bracket on the truck, the bumper bracket and the SKT bracket. Just like that. We'll do the same on the other side, get the other bracket installed, and then we will install the pod mount bar that goes across here. Now, for this long bar, it's gonna squeeze it in here. And we're gonna take the remaining two 10mm bolts, 11mm nuts, and from the front side, there we go. I'm gonna wanna leave this a little bit loose because we are going to want to adjust this once we get the pods in. So just snug it up a little bit. Alrighty, once you got this snugged up, do the same on the other side, and then we will install the pods.
Alright guys, so for the bracket installation, typical Diode Dynamics stuff here, you're going to insert the nuts in the pod. And now the SKT bracket. So this bracket is going to go like, if I remember, just like this. So that is how that bracket is going to sit in there. Not like that, like that. I don't want to flip this over because the nuts will fall out, but that's the way you want it to sit. Alright guys, so for the pod installation, start with the middle pod first. Get that one lined up, and that will kind of help center this bracket in here. Remember to keep this bracket loose so that way you can guide the pod in and guide the bolt for the bracket through that hole there. So like I said, start with the center one and then work your way out just to get everything all level. And then the bigger nuts and bolts that came in the SKT kit are both 14mm, and then we work to the outside. So once you kind of get it centered in the hole, you go in from behind and start this nut. That way it's holding, and then you can go ahead and adjust it once the nut is started. Snug it down a little bit, tight enough to where you can still just barely move it. And then we'll go back to the front and center everything. And then once everything looks centered, go ahead from behind and tighten that nut down. All right, so everything is looking pretty centered. So that is about as flush as you can make this pod. So it does protrude out from the grill just a little bit. Now this is the Diode Dynamics pods. Like I said earlier, this grill is cut out for the Baja designs, but it is still flush with the grill, as you can tell here. So looks good though. There's actually a lot of adjustment because there's your Allen right there on the Diode Dynamics pod. So there is still a ton of up and down, you know, height wise adjustment, and there is some in and out adjustment as well. But I got it as flush as it's going to be, and it looks pretty good. So one thing I do want to mention is you're probably going to run into this issue that I am running into. It's not really an issue, but when you put the pod in, these Allen bolts for the Diode Dynamics bracket are going to rub the opening, the cutout right here, just a little bit. You can do one of two things. You can shave that down a little bit so it doesn't rub, or you can just do what I do and just push it in. It fits fine. It just rubs that edge. So it's really not a big deal, but something I do want to mention. If you're wondering like what the heck's going on, it's fine, it's normal. All right, so here is how it looks from the back side. As you can tell, plenty of room to plug your harness in. There's the other one. Still waiting for two more. They should be here pretty soon, and then I'll be able to wrap this thing up. Alrighty, so let's talk about wiring and get all of that out of the way. So I'm going to talk about wiring these up to a switch panel first, and then I will go into how to wire these up if you don't have a switch panel and you're just using a toggle switch. So let's get the switch panel wiring out of the way first. If you already know all this, you can skip this. But for those of you who don't know, this is how I recommend wiring this whole setup here. So what I have here is a harness that started out as a regular dual pod wiring harness from Diode Dynamics, and it had a switch and a relay on it. I cut all of that out, the switch and the relay, because I have a switch panel. So that left me with, obviously, your 2 connectors for each pod. And it left me with actually 6 wires. So 2 red, 2 black, and 2 blue. If you cut this harness in half, or you cut the relay part out of it, you're left with 6 wires. So when I had ditch lights, I just took the 2 reds, tied them together just like this, and I made it into 1 lead, and I did the same for the negative. That allowed me to have just 2 leads going into my switch panel instead of 4. There's just no reason to stuff 2 and 2 in there when you can just combine them like that and just have 1 lead for each. Since this setup is going to have amber pods and white pods, I'm going to want to turn them on at different times. So I simply just cut these out, and I am left with 2 and 2. 2 red, 2 black. Now that's going to allow me to hook one of these plugs up to the ambers right here, and the other plug for the whites on 2 separate switches. The blue wire, if you're not familiar, is your backlit wire. By the way, this applies to only backlit as well, this next part. So if you don't have backlit pods, you can skip this. If you have the backlit pods, I suggest tying both blues into 1 blue. That way you can just run a single wire to your accessory. In my case, all my backlit wires are ran off of a add-a-fuse. So when the truck is on, all the backlit pods are on. So I suggest doing it this way. Just hook both of these wires into 1. That way you have 1 lead for all your backlit lighting. And then we're left with, obviously, 2 and 2. 2 wires for the white pods, 2 wires for the amber pods. You can skip this if you're going to turn them all on at the same time, or if you're just running all whites or just all ambers, you can skip this part or whatever. But cliff notes, if you want your ambers and whites to come on at separate times, cut this harness in half, leave it cut in half. That way you have 2 leads, 1 for white, 1 for amber, and combine both of your backlit wires to 1. And that is that. If you're going to utilize the flow-blown wiring harness with the toggle switch and the relay stuff, and you want your lights, and you're going to run amber and white, and you want them to turn on at different times, you're just going to have to run 2 harnesses to your truck. That way you have 2 switches. Obviously, if you're going to turn them all on at once, you only have to run 1. So that part is self-explanatory as well. That harness, I'm going to link the harness down below because you're going to need it regardless, unless you make your own harnesses. I will link the harness down below that has the toggle switch and all that stuff. So you just hook up the positive and negative eyelets to your battery, run your switch in the truck, bada bing, done. So that is it for the wiring going from the pods to your switch. Now we're going to talk about wiring going from the pods to these. So hopefully that makes sense. I tried to explain it the easiest, best way I could. If you are confused or whatever, hit me up in the comments. But if you're utilizing a switch panel, it's a matter of just cutting this harness or cutting the relay and switch off of this harness and just using these leads for your power. All right, guys, so now talking about wiring the pods to our switch leads that I just got done talking about. So what you're going to need, regardless if you're doing a 1 switch or 2 switch, you're going to need 3 of these splitters. Now, these are the ultra heavy duty ones, so they're not exactly correct. Everything you need to do what I'm doing will be linked down below. I'm just using these as an example, just to give you guys a visual. So pretend we're looking at the back side of the grill. We've got our 5 pods. Here is one of my amber outer pods, and then we've got 3 white pods, and then the outer amber pod on the other side. If you're doing what I'm doing, you're gonna have your ambers and your whites on separate switches. This is how you wanna do it. And by the way, these 3 splitters are needed whether you're doing 1 or 2 switch. So let's take care of the 2 switch first. So here is splitter number 1. So this is going to go right to the harness leading to our switches. You're going to plug that into that. And then we've got 2 leads. One of these leads goes into the first amber pod. This lead is going to go all the way to the other amber pod on the other side. Now, as you can tell, it's not going to reach. So that's where this extension comes into play, which is not needed if you're only using 1 switch. So if you want your pods to all turn on 1 switch, you don't need this part. So we're going to plug this guy into here, and this is going to go to our other amber pod. So now we've got both amber pods plugged in. This goes to our switch harness, and that is that for the amber pods. Now, for the 3 white pods, this is going to take the 2 other splitters. So one goes into 1 pod, the other goes into the middle pod, and then this guy goes into the third pod. This guy gets plugged into here, and then this guy goes to our second switch harness. So that is the gist of wiring your pods to your switch. All right, guys, so that is going to do it for this video. I did want to incorporate some output shots of this setup in this video, but it was such a long video that I'm just going to make a separate output video of this setup and just add it to the end screen. So when you guys are done watching this video, that end screen of the output of this setup will be there. Just click on it and you can see the output. So like I said, that is going to do it for this video, guys. If you have any questions, hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you think, and we will catch you guys on the next one.